University. Tonight's quiet lesson is about the Battle of the Caribbean, German and Italian submarines, Allied convoys, oil tankers, island refineries, and the crucial role of Curaçao in keeping Allied ships and aircraft supplied with fuel. So sit back, get comfortable, and imagine Willemstad at night, with refinery lights glowing across the water and dark sea lanes stretching toward the wider war. Tonight we are going to speak softly about the Battle of the Caribbean. The name can sound surprising at first. When people think of the Second World War at sea, they often think of the North Atlantic, Arctic convoys, the Pacific or the Mediterranean. But the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico also became part of the naval war. German U-boats and Italian submarines attacked shipping, tankers, and coastal targets in an effort to disrupt Allied supply lines. This campaign is often treated as part of the larger Battle of the Atlantic. It took place mainly between 1941 and 1945, with especially intense attacks in 1942. Its geography included the Antilles, the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, approaches to the Panama Canal, and the sea lanes around Venezuela, Aruba, Curaçao, Trinidad, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and other islands. The reason the Caribbean mattered can be summarized in one word: oil. Modern war depended on fuel. Ships needed fuel oil. Aircraft needed aviation gasoline. Tanks, trucks, generators, factories, escorts and convoys all depended on petroleum. A fleet without fuel is only steel waiting in harbour. An air force without fuel is only aircraft on the ground. The Caribbean was strategically important because of Venezuelan oil fields and the refineries that processed that oil. Curaçao, Aruba, and Trinidad became crucial nodes in the Allied fuel system. Tankers moved crude oil and refined products through waters that Axis submarines wanted to make dangerous. Curaçao's role was especially important. The Royal Dutch Shell refinery on Curaçao, located around the Schottegat harbour near Willemstad, was one of the largest oil refineries in the world during the war. Contemporary accounts describe it as processing around 11 million barrels per month. This made the island far more than a colonial Caribbean possession. It was a strategic fuel engine for the Allied war effort. Oil from Venezuela could be refined on Curaçao and then shipped onward. In the early years of the war, when routes from the Middle East through the Mediterranean were disrupted, Caribbean oil became even more significant. Curaçao and Aruba helped supply fuel that kept Allied naval and air operations moving. This is the quiet centre of tonight's episode. The war was not only fought by battleships and bombers, it was also fought through storage tanks, refineries, docks, pipelines, tugboats, tankers, repair yards, harbour defences, and workers who kept fuel moving. For Curaçao, this meant that the island became both valuable and vulnerable. Its refinery lights were part of the Allied supply chain, but that also made the island a target. If the Axis powers could damage refineries, sink tankers, or disrupt shipping routes, they could affect operations far beyond the Caribbean. In February 1942, German submarines began a major offensive in the region known as Operation Neuland. U-boats attacked around Aruba, Curaçao, and the approaches to Lake Maracaibo. Tankers were torpedoed. Refineries and harbour areas came under threat. The Caribbean War was suddenly very close to shore. Near Curaçao, U-boats attacked tankers and shipping connected to Willemstad. Around Aruba, U-156 attacked tankers near San Nicolas and attempted to shell the refinery there, though the attack caused limited damage. These events showed how exposed the oil system could be. The submarine war was not only about sinking ships, it was about interrupting rhythm. A refinery depends on steady movement, crude oil arriving, refined fuel departing, ships loading, workers operating, tanks filling and emptying, schedules being maintained. U-boats tried to break that rhythm with fear, loss and uncertainty. Allied defence improved over time. Patrol aircraft, convoy systems, escorts, radar, sonar, air bases, intelligence, and better anti-submarine tactics made the Caribbean more dangerous for Axis submarines. The United States, Britain, Canada, the Netherlands, and Caribbean authorities all played roles in securing the region. Curaçao itself became militarized. After the German invasion of the Netherlands in 1940, the Dutch Caribbean islands with oil facilities gained new strategic urgency. British and later American forces helped defend Aruba and Curaçao. Airfields such as Hato on Curaçao became part of the defensive network. This military presence changed island life. Curaçao was not invaded, but the war came through defences, blackout precautions, harbour security, foreign troops, naval coordination, and the constant importance of the refinery. The island's geography connected local life to global war. Willemstad and Schottegat were not merely picturesque places. The deep natural harbour and refinery complex formed a logistical heart. Ships could load, repair, wait, and move fuel outward. The lights of the refinery represented work happening at all hours because the Allied war machine needed constant energy. The phrase Allied fleet can make us imagine warships first, but the fleet also depended on tankers. Tankers were vulnerable, essential ships. They carried the fuel that made movement possible. Losing a tanker meant losing cargo, crew, time, and capacity. Protecting tankers was therefore protecting the operational life of the fleet. The Caribbean also mattered because of the Panama Canal. The canal connected the Atlantic and Pacific, making it a strategic artery. Control of Caribbean approaches and protection of nearby shipping lanes helped secure movement between oceans. Fuel, ships, aircraft, and military planning all intersected in the region. Axis submarines also targeted shipping in the Gulf of Mexico and around the Antilles. They sank merchant ships and tankers, sometimes close enough to shore that civilians could see flames or wreckage. The war at sea was not always distant from ordinary life. For crews aboard tankers, the danger was severe. Oil cargo could burn. A torpedo strike could turn a ship into fire on water. Survivors might drift for hours or days in lifeboats. The Caribbean's warm image in peacetime hides the danger of wartime sea lanes. At the same time, the campaign can be understood as a battle of adaptation. At first, Allied defences were not always strong enough. Submarines exploited gaps. Over time, aircraft patrols expanded. Convoys became better protected. Escorts improved. And Allied command learned how to make the region harder for U-boats. This is why the Battle of the Caribbean ended as an Allied success. The Axis powers failed to permanently cut the flow of oil and strategic materials. The refineries continued to matter. Curaçao continued supplying refined fuel. The Allied system bent, suffered, adapted, and kept moving. The human story on Curaçao includes refinery workers, dock workers, sailors, pilots, soldiers, local families, Dutch colonial authorities, American troops, and people who understood that their island had become important in a war stretching across oceans. The refinery's importance also had economic and social consequences. The oil industry had already transformed Curaçao before the war. During the war, its strategic role intensified. The island's harbour and refinery became part of a global logistics network, linking Venezuelan oil, Caribbean labour, Allied naval power, and distant battlefronts. This is the kind of history that is easy to miss because it is logistical. Battles with famous names often attract attention. Fuel supply rarely does, but logistics is the skeleton of war. Without fuel, ships cannot escort convoys, aircraft cannot patrol, armies cannot move, factories cannot deliver. Victory depends not only on courage, but on barrels, pumps, routes, and protection. Curaçao's wartime role reminds us that small islands can hold enormous strategic value. A place may look small on a map and still be central to world history. During the Battle of the Caribbean, Curaçao was one of those places, small in land area, large in consequence. The Curaçao refinery also connects the Caribbean campaign to North Africa, the Atlantic, and the air war. Fuel refined in the Caribbean did not simply remain in the region. It moved outward through tankers and supply systems to support Allied operations elsewhere. This made the island part of a chain that stretched from Venezuelan oil fields to refineries, from refineries to tankers, from tankers to bases, and from bases to fleets and aircraft. The phrase supplying the Allied fleet sounds simple, but behind it was constant work. Crude oil had to arrive safely. Refinery units had to keep running. Storage tanks had to be protected. Ships had to be loaded. Harbour movements had to be scheduled. Workers had to maintain equipment in heat, noise, fumes, and wartime pressure. Fuel quality mattered too. Different engines needed different products. Naval fuel oil, diesel, gasoline, aviation fuel, lubricants, and other refined materials. A refinery was not a single pipe turning oil into one thing. It was a complex industrial system, producing many forms of energy for many kinds of machines. This is why Curaçao's role deserves emphasis. The island was not merely storing oil, it was transforming oil into usable military power. Every escorted convoy, every patrol aircraft, every warship leaving port depended on this invisible conversion from crude resource to operational movement. The people who worked in and around the refinery were therefore part of the war effort. They may not appear in famous battle paintings, but their labour mattered. Refinery operators, mechanics, dock workers, clerks, guards, pilots, sailors, tugboat crews, and local authorities all contributed to keeping the fuel system alive. There is also a local dimension. Curaçao was a Caribbean society with its own languages, communities, inequalities, and colonial context. The war did not arrive on a blank island. It arrived in a place where oil had already changed labour, migration, housing, pollution, money, and social life. Wartime strategy intensified changes already underway. American troops on the island added another layer. Their presence was meant to protect strategic facilities, but it also changed the atmosphere of Curaçao. Military defence, Allied coordination, and local civilian life existed together. A global war settled into daily routines, watches, shifts, patrols, rumours, alerts, and work. The U-boat threat also shaped psychology. Even when no attack was happening, the possibility mattered. A tanker leaving harbour might not return. A light visible at night could feel dangerous. A refinery that brought employment and importance also brought vulnerability. This kind of war is quieter than a famous invasion, but it is no less real. It is a war of routes, tonnage, barrels, escort schedules, and risk calculations. It is a war where the loss of a tanker can matter as much as the loss of a gun. Oil also created interdependence. Venezuela provided crude, Curaçao refined it, Allied navies and air forces used it, Caribbean ports handled it, sailors carried it, patrol aircraft protected it. A single island became one link in a system too large for any one person to see completely. The Axis strategy understood that interdependence. U-boats did not need to conquer Curaçao to threaten the system. They only needed to make movement dangerous, sink enough tankers, damage enough facilities, or force the Allies to spend more ships and aircraft on protection. Disruption itself was a weapon. Allied success came from making disruption harder. More escorts, better air coverage, convoy organization, improved detection and experience gradually reduced the freedom of submarines. In logistics, survival often comes from repetition. Another patrol, another convoy, another repaired ship, another loaded tanker. By the later years of the war, the Caribbean was no longer as open to Axis submarine operations as it had been in 1942. The campaign did not end with one dramatic final battle. It faded through Allied adaptation and the growing strength of anti-submarine warfare. That makes the Battle of the Caribbean a different kind of story. It is not a single day like Pearl Harbor, or a single ship like Titanic. It is a campaign of pressure and persistence spread across water, islands, machinery, and fuel. As this lecture closes, imagine the harbour at night. Tankers sit low in the water. Refinery lights reflect on Schottegat. Patrol aircraft move somewhere above the dark. Beyond the island, submarines and escorts contest invisible roads across the sea. The Battle of the Caribbean was a battle for movement, fuel, and continuity. It was fought in torpedo wakes and convoy lanes, but also in refinery shifts, harbour watches, and the steady work of keeping oil flowing. Tonight, let Curaçao's lights remain in the mind, quiet, industrial, strategic, and essential. Let the sea become calm again. Let the lesson settle like moonlight over Willemstad. I want to thank you for listening to Whisper University. If you made it all the way to the end, I'm very glad you are here. I hope tonight's quiet lesson helped you relax, learn something new, or simply drift for a little while in a calmer direction. If you enjoyed this whispered lecture, you can support Whisper University by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, or leaving a gentle comment with a topic you would like to hear next. It helps this little university grow and helps us keep making the world